my first piece from France as a kid listening, it was of course, it's the Clair de Lune, yeah, by Debussy. And I just fell in love with this type of impressionist French repertoire. But very interesting for me the first thing that for me to practice, it was Rameau. Rameau was more the much earlier, the music is it's even a bit sounds Baroque. So I was practicing his some of the exercise for a kid. But I prefer, impressionist French music. And of course, another great melody I was listening as a kid, it was and actually the first piece I ever played, it was not Rameau. Now I remember. It's the arrangement of Carmen. Yeah, that was the first arrangement I played ever, the French music. The Piano Concerto No. 2. I always want to play this piece. The first time I saw the video was Arthur Rubinstein. This famous old recording he made together with Grieg and Chopin No. 2. It was 3 concertos when he was almost 90 years old. I think it's more than 90 years. He was 91 or something. He put this 3 concertos into one concert with Previn conducting. It was a legendary recording. And since then, when I see Rubinstein plays this kind of like a Bach, beginning from Saint-Saëns. I just fell in love with this piece. But I never had the chance to play. There's few reasons, and there's a lot of orchestra in the world. They don't know so much about Saint-Saëns, and it's not their first choice to perform. So until 3 years ago, I finally had my first performance with this piece with Philadelphia Orchestra. And then afterward, everyone want to play this. It seems like now, last year I played with Vienna Philharmonic 12 times on Saint-Saëns 2. And the last time they performed, it was 60 years ago, 60 years ago. And they said, for sure the next time it's not going to be this long. So in a way, that was one of the pieces that I want to record first. And then of course together, it's the Carnival of Animals. We also believe it's having a really incredible kind of popularity among the younger generation, especially for children, who always start to have a kind of a listening experience in classical music, and seems like Elephant. This is always my my son's favorite. And after he know the Elephant, even though it's a double bass, but he's fell in love with cello because of this piece, and Swan. Yes, so now he want to learn cello because of this. I would say, even though I really love the Ravel Piano Concerto, of course, yeah, but if you ask me the truth, what I think No. 2 Saint-Saëns is better piece than the Ravel Concerto. The reason is that the Ravel it's fantastic piece, yeah, but the thing is the third movement is too short in a way, and and I think the Saint-Saëns is more the structurally talking. It's fulfilled a little bit more like a traditional piano concerto, I would say. So in a way, even though Ravel piano concerto may be played more often than Saint-Saëns number 2, but technically, and also everything, if you count as a whole piece, I would say Saint-Saëns number 2 is my favorite. Yeah, among all the French concertos, and then I would say Ravel, and then Saint-Saëns also number 4, number 5 is great pieces as well. My favorites are Rubinstein, and also my live favorite was Fehmarn Bronfman. He played this piece so brilliantly. I still remember my first year in Philadelphia. That was '97. I was still a teenager. I was 14, and I saw Fehmarn play this part. Oh, that was so beautiful, and the way he made it. And all those kind of flair, So from what I see, live, Fehmarn is by far the most interesting. And then I must say another recording I really like a lot is Pletnev. Pletnev plays really unique with the colors, the dimension of the piece, and that was very inspiring. So Lili Boulanger is kind of maybe the most famous among these 5, but I think the most underestimated was Charlotte Sohi. I mean, with this melody, incredible. This is, this is exactly the same level as Ravel or Debussy. This is the most beautiful Parisian. This is you don't need to come to Paris. When you hear this music, you already walk on the street in Paris. And another one I also love a lot was Terry Fair. This is what I call the Satie. The female Satie, I would say. And it's like, this is incredible, 3 beats, kind of a slow waltz. This is called the Valse Lento, so it's like a slow waltz, and it's a bit like Satie, and it's kind of like the time stopped. And I actually listened to, she played a Satie piece, incredible. It's mysterious, it's lyrical, and it's just, she has this magic to bring you to a certain mood. And I think playing this piece by her, it's very similar, thinking about Satie. Yeah, I think this gives us the great responsibility and chance and opportunities, for us also as a performer to bring some new music. Not new music, but to rediscover some great music, which is kind of buried somewhere, like people doesn't really know.
This project really is a lot of fun, because it's the first time that we did a piano album together, and such a fun piece, which is Carnival of the Animals. It's a piece loved by adults and children all over the world, and it's a very colorful and a lot of imagination in this piece, because there are so many different animals, and every animal has their own characteristics, and it's really reflecting life, because life also can be like a colorful zoo.
For example, like the lion. We had a really good practice here, but of course we prepared quite well. We even performed a few times in China before the recording with the Leipzig Gewandhaus. The carnivals was actually less challenge. The real challenge was Debussy Petite Suite.
Yes.
That is much harder.
It needs to be super precise. And also in the carnivals, for example, there's this that piece. It needs to be 100% synchronized, like one piano, even though it's two people and two pianos, but it needs
Same
same pedal.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of chemistry, a lot of like
Listening.
listening and breathing together, and also because we're sitting like two pianos, and I think looking at each other's eyes is also very important.
I think the soft part from Debussy.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, the one with the. So this kind of. You know, this kind of a softness, and we have to breathe together to play as light as possible, like a cat, like two cats trying to, walk on the water.
Yes.
This is the for me that was the hard part.
That was a different style than what we played before together, because this one is really, Debussy is like a watercolor painting. It's like sometimes I don't even feel I touched the piano. I was just breathing, and the note is like
It's
needs
like
to be
that,
so
right.
subtle and so soft, and it's a different world. Yeah.
So for me, I think Gina put a lot of this very dolce feeling, and also she calmed me down in a way. We both are a big fan of Paris, but particularly I remember when our first time in Paris, she just she just loved the style of the French people, living style, and also the artistic style. This city is like you're living in a you're living in the fashion world and art world. I mean, this is the whole street is it's almost like artwork, So in a way, I think I got also inspired by this flair, from her feelings, and that helps me a lot because it's French repertoire, and it's a very different the way, the approach, the touch, compared to German music, to Russian, and to any classical repertoire, Spanish. The French has a typical, like the way, very individual way of thinking. And if you look into Saint-Saëns himself playing his concerto, and this kind of, it's already. It's always there, but it's not there. It's kind of like a beautiful ghost, trying to search something. With Ravel, same thing. When you hear he's playing, this is kind of he's painting. He's a painting, a impressionist painting, and I think that in this way, Gina is very good at, because she also wrote some songs of like this slow pattern, and that helps me to, really kind of take the time and not in a hurry, to just breathe. I think in this way she helped a lot.
What I love about Lang Lang's playing is he can play all the different characteristics. Like he can be fire, he can be get the most beautiful singing melody out of the piano, and always in between the notes, because he's really caring about every note. The tension and the feeling between notes is just always so mesmerizing and really gets you, like it gets you into a different world. And of course the virtuoso part we don't even need to talk about. It's like you don't even need to think about it listening to Lang Lang. It's just he makes music on a very magic level, and all the different emotions and personalities, characteristics of every different piece, every different genre, like classical, baroque, and romantic, is a very wide and broad feeling.
Yeah, I think the Goldberg Variation recording, the project, is basically a new transition of my life. It's a new milestone. It's really set me to a much higher goal, which is becoming a real deeper musician in the future. And that step really helped me to get to where I wanted. But of course, there's always room to keep going and to keep improving. But the good news is I made that step, and in that, and this was a very challenging. And I was before I made that step, I didn't know whether it's going to work or not. You have to be brave to do this old Baroque music thing as a what you call romantic player, people like me. And it was a really good step forward. And now I'm much more confident with those new areas. Of course, the ultimate ones are Glenn Gould, and then the Barenboim, Schiff. I mean, you name it. I mean, Pariah. It's all incredible recordings. And yeah, but I think I made something in the piece which I feel quite proud of.